what was the podcast take on the Verlander to the Mets thing? Because like I couldn't have envisioned a better bounce back from losing Jacob DeGrom than signing Justin Verlander to a deal that pays him $98 million less and is 3 years, like from a team perspective, obviously, and 3 years shorter term. Like, to me, like, I know obviously you sign like basically a 40-year-old pitcher. There's a level of risk there that's just kind of built in, but on a 2-year pact for a guy who, like, well, maybe he doesn't post a 1.75 ERA again, but there wasn't anything about his numbers that suggested that the end is near. No. And he could gain a run of ERA and still be like well worth $40 million a year. Like, you know, no loss of velo. You know, I think
metrically everything's there.
Yeah, you see some of these guys who, like, as they advance down their career and they want to keep the strikeouts intact, like they lean super heavily into sliders. Like we've seen that both from relievers and starters, where you see guys that are like all of a sudden pumping 40% sliders and striking out, you know, 10% more batters than they did the previous season. Verlander's not really doing that. Like,
and he's still shoving the heater up your ass.
Yeah, he's still got that fastball. And I don't know, I feel like that was, to me, that might be my single favorite signing of the offseason, just given like how much less exposed it feels like they are than, you know, a 5-year, 180 whatever $1 million pact for Jacob DeGrom. That, you know, it's tough to talk that game that Steve Cohen and the Mets were talking in terms of spending and then see DeGrom leave, but to know that it was backed up by plopping down, you know, almost $45 million a year for Justin Verlander. And then there's like the soft factor of the idea that you have Verlander and Scherzer, like two inner circle Hall of Fame guys kind of at the end, but still super awesome at the top of a rotation. Like, I don't know. That's kind of cool from a baseball and baseball history fan perspective.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Do you think the Mets are a better team now than they were at the end of the year?
Not really. No. It's hard not to feel the sting of that, the Carlos Correa what if.
I mean, JayHay.
Like, I think it was a successful offseason overall for the Mets. Like, I feel like they can not be any better and have it be a little disappointing with the way that it played out, while also still being pretty successful because, you know, Diaz could have gotten away. They could have replaced DeGrom with somebody a lot less impressive than Justin Verlander. They brought Brandon Nimmo back, regardless of what you think about, you know, 8 years and $160 million or whatever for Brandon Nimmo. Like, he makes that team better. I think they're roughly the same team that they were to start last season. I think Quintana is a nice replacement for Ty Walker. But, you know, it did feel like the Correa move was the one that kind of put them over the top in terms of the offseason. And to not have that, I'm not a doctor, obviously, can't look at the medicals, but that feels tough. It's tough to get teased like that, I guess. Do you guys think they're better? Or
I think that they, for a team that took a couple of blows, like having Carlos Correa, then not having Carlos Correa, having Jacob DeGrom, then not having Jacob DeGrom.
Yeah.
I think that they have done I don't want to say adequate, maybe I'll even say above average job of, I would say, wearing 2 flesh wounds and still walking out of the hospital. Like, I think that they're, like, most teams cannot lose Jacob DeGrom and Carlos Correa in the same offseason and come away from it like, hey, we're still going to contend for a World Series. And I feel like the Mets are still in that spot.
I think what makes it interesting is that it's a more complicated offseason in terms of successes or whatever than either of the teams they're competing against in the division. Like, the Braves had a straightforward, like, very successful offseason, I would say. You know, the contract extensions, the Sean Murphy acquisition and extension. Like, the Braves continued doing what they do, lock up their young core, and they got better by importing another piece that fits along that timeline in Murphy. And the Phillies just went out and were like, we're going to sign Trey Turner for $300 million, and he just makes our team better. And we're not really losing anybody of significance that he has to replace. And for the Mets, it's, as you said, it's kind of like a give and take. It's a drop and add sort of situation, and it's kind of a little bit more of an eye of the beholder which players do you prefer sort of thing. So I do think that plays into kind of the two sides of the Mets offseason or how it's perceived.